Hey guys, today I want to talk about long distance relationships. A lot of you guys are looking at me saying, what happened to Steve with his nose? It's still the sunburn. I'm still healing from my sunburn. But I want to talk about long distance relationships because a lot of people out there talk about long distance relationships. There's a lot to be said about long distance relationships, both good and bad. And I'm going to discuss this today, is that a lot of guys are getting into these long distance relationships. And I want to get really deeper into this because a lot of the stuff that we talked about, we kind of covered a lot of the stuff, like, and I'll recover that today a little bit today, but we're going to go a lot deeper into this. And also I want you guys to add your comments on this, guys that have been through long distance relationships, because there's good and bad, in everything, of course. And, I'm not telling people not to get into a long distance relationship, and I'm not telling them to get into a long distance relationship. I want to give you the ups and downs of the long distance relationships. And that is that long distance relationships can be very rough on both sides, but they can also be good because of the fact that you can talk to these people every day. You can pick up your phone and just talk to them and say, have a good conversation with them. And it feels like they're right there next to you sometimes because of the technology that we have today. That's a great thing. But the downside of it is if you're with a girl that's a scammer, and sometimes the guys are scammers too, so in their own right, in a different way. It's not about money, it's about other things, and the girls will try to get you to feel bad for them and have them send money, and they get you to send them money for a year or two, and then they dump you. And that happens also here, and that's the downside of this here stuff. Now, I've had a long distance relationship, and it worked out pretty good for me, and after a while sometimes you break off or whatever, and that happens too. But I mean, overall it was a good relationship, so things, you can look at things with a different eye all the time here, and if you keep a positive look on things, that you've learned something from something, then you come out of it in a good way. And I've always looked at relationships that, when you're going through the breakup, it's difficult, but later on you look back and say, you know what, we had a good time, we had a good life, and we still remain friends or whatever. And that's the positive side of going through a relationship and still breaking up and still being happy. Some relationships just don't last forever. But the long distance relationships, here's the downside for the girls. Sometimes a lot of guys come here and they have this game that they play because they're lonely back home, okay? And they're old. Usually this comes from the older guys. Sometimes it's with the younger guys too, but it tends to be from the older guys. I notice they're back in the United States, they're back in England, they're back in Australia, they're in their 70s, they know they're not going to live that much longer, so they kind of play this, they string the girl along, they send her some money each month, so they have somebody that they can wake up in the morning and talk to at least, and it's almost like having a marriage, because they might not function sexually, so to them that's like having kind of a relationship where they can wake up in the morning, have their coffee, sit there and talk to their Filipino girlfriend, a beautiful girl, whatever, that's usually somewhat younger than them, or even if it's not younger, at least it's kind of a relationship they can have. And that's kind of a good thing for the guy, but I think it's kind of stringing along some of these girls, and I don't think it's good for the girl, because I think if you're giving her money and then all of a sudden later on you decide, you know what, I'm gonna cut this off or whatever, or you die or whatever happens, the problem is, as these girls age, it's harder for them to find people, and also harder for them to find a job. And if they're younger, they can still find a job. And a lot of times when these girls get into these relationships, what happens is they don't work because they have the guy helping them. And the best thing that you can have that girl do is still work and let her work. And a lot of guys say, well, I don't want my girlfriend working, I don't want this, this happening, I don't want her working at all. This way here, I know what she's doing or whatever. We're all older. Most of us are older. Some of us might have 5, 10, 15, 20 years to go, maybe 25 if we're lucky. But with these girls not working, they're not going to get any Social Security from the Philippine government later on. They're not going to have any benefits. They're not going to have any savings. And also they're not going to have any life insurance, or health insurance rather. There's a lot of aspects that a lot of guys don't look at because they're selfish. Let's just say it bluntly. Even though you're sending them money, a lot of guys don't understand the way things work around here, that money goes quick over here. Their family hits them up for money because they know that they're with an American guy or what have you. and the money goes quick. People over here don't tend to save at all. If you find a girl that saves, that's the girl that, and that's a prize in the Philippines. If you can find a girl that saves, it really is. If you can find a girl that saves over here, that's a real prize. If you can find a girl without jealousy, you know, and a lot of us have been here for a while, and we have some baggage that we bring forward with us. And some of that baggage, it might not be bad baggage in your eyes, but it might be in somebody else's eyes. And sometimes, you know, we have to look at that and say, well, how much baggage do we want to carry forward? And we might want to kind of tell people, well, if you can't accept this, then I'm not for you, you know. And that's really for the relationships that are for over here. But in long distance relationships, sometimes we take baggage along too, and we take it over here and we unload it over here. We talk about that quite often. And a lot of the guys don't leave that baggage home. They take it over here and they unload it over here, and the girl didn't see that, and you didn't see her baggage because you were over there and you were doing this long distance relationship online, talking to people just like I'm talking to you right now. And you're not going to show your worst. You're kind of in the honeymoon phase. You know, when you're talking to the girl, she's not going to tell you her issues. She's not going to tell you her family issues, and you're not going to see her family issues. They're going to talk to you, and you're going to feel like you're close with them because you're talking to them, and they're going to show you their best. That's part of the bad side of a long distance relationship. And here's the other downside of it too. When a lot of guys get here, here's the problem. A lot of guys, when they get here, they get here and they start seeing those faults that they missed in the conversations, whether it's been a year or 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years, or even longer in some cases. You know, they don't see the faults, okay? And then they start realizing those faults. And sometimes they realize, you know, the grass is greener out there. It's a little bit greener out there. And I probably should have come over here and been single when I came here. It's tough being single and older over here, though. I will say that when you come over here, to be single over here, God forbid something happens to you while you're single, it's rough, you know. So sometimes it's nice having the insta girlfriend here when you get off the plane or whatever, you know, the girlfriend that's there for you right away, picks you up at the airport. It's nice having that. Let me tell you, it is a blessing in so many ways. That's the upside of it. But the downside is sometimes when you're here, I notice a lot of the guys will be with a girl that they met online for like the first 3 months, 6 months, year, even a couple of years sometimes. They start seeing the greener pastures. They start seeing that and they're like, And then it's kind of like too late because it's hard to get out of that relationship at that point, you know? And some of the guys have told me that. They said that they feel bad because of, you know, they want to leave the girl, but the girl's treated them good. Because they got into the relationship too quickly, I think, sometimes. And we all make mistakes. That's part of living in the Philippines, you know, and part of living in general. We all are going to make mistakes. But a lot of guys come over here and they see these wonderful women out there, and they're like, you know, like, gee, I'd like to get involved with this woman, but I'm with her now. And, you know, that's why some of you's got to think before you get into these long distance relationships, you know. And there are other types of long distance relationships with OFWs, and that's another whole aspect by itself. And that's kind of a nice way to get into it with a girl over here, because when an OFW is an overseas foreign worker, let's say she's in Saudi Arabia or Kuwait or Japan or Taiwan or Singapore or something like that. And these girls work all over the world. They could be in Canada for all we know, or the UK, working somewhere. And those are great relationships, because in a lot of the cases when they're working in some of the Saudi Arabia, Kuwait and stuff like that, it's hard for them to have a relationship over there because of their circumstances over there, because they have really, you know, they have religious laws over there, and if these girls break these laws or they get caught, they can get killed having a relationship or something. It's very difficult. Now, like in other countries like Taiwan, Singapore, places like that, they can have a relationship and it's okay. But some of these girls that are in these really hardcore countries that their religious laws are really tight on people. Those girls are actually are perfect for a relationship. They're actually ripe for a relationship. So when they come home, you know, they've been away sometimes at least 2 years, usually on average, and sometimes they've been away for 10 or 15 years because they keep re-upping their thing and they just don't want to go home because they don't have much to go to. I've heard a lot of guys with girls that were over there for 10 years and never been home because they couldn't afford it. It is they have those countries. They tend to keep the people kind of tied up a little bit, like keep them busy. If they do something wrong or break something in the house, they charge them for that, so they never really can save a lot of their money. So they end up not coming home at the end of their contract. They end up doing another contract for the same people, and the same thing they get into these abusive contracts, I'll say, with people. It can be really, really rough for some of these people. Now, usually that doesn't happen in the other Asian countries like Singapore, Taiwan, places like that. It usually doesn't happen in those places. It happens more in the, like over near Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, places like that. They have a lot of issues. In some of those countries, they still treat them really, really good too. I hear stories from both sides. They also have people that work in Russia, and they have Filipinos that work in Ukraine too. They work all over the world. The Russian ones tend to like it up there for whatever reason. They get treated pretty good up there. They really enjoy it. I actually know one of the girls that works up there. She enjoys working up in Russia. I believe the people or the company treats her really decent up there. And these are perfect relationships to get into sometimes because of the fact that they're lonely. They're very loving women. They're very decent women. And a lot of these women have actually saved a ton of money. They've actually set up their life back here. They've bought property. They've bought houses. They've bought and sold houses to make money. They've actually started aggressively working on their wealth back here. And in some cases, they're actually wealthier than the guys that they're going with, because some of these guys are on limited funds. They're $1,500, $2,000 a month budgets, living off their Social Security or whatever, and that's all they got. So the woman brings something to the table for these guys, and that's a great thing. But I did want to talk about this stuff. There's a lot of pluses and minuses, I should say, to these types of relationships. But anyway, guys, God bless. Take care. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And also be sure to comment today on this here on how you feel about this. Do you think it's a plus or a minus on having long distance relationships? God bless, guys. Take care.